I never imagined that as I lay dying in a hospital bed, my own children would be in the next room, plotting to hasten my death with poison to get their hands on my $10 million inheritance. My name is Arthur Calloway. I'm 67 years old, and until March 15th, 2024, I believed I had raised 2 children who loved me. That Sunday night, everything changed forever. I was having a quiet dinner at my home on Park Avenue, enjoying the lasagna I made every Sunday. It was a tradition I'd kept since my beloved Rose passed away 5 years ago. I always cooked her recipe to remember her because she used to say my lasagna was even better than hers, though I knew she was just being sweet. Suddenly, it felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. The pain was so intense that the fork slipped from my hands, clattering loudly in the silence of my dining room. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't respond. My left arm ached as if 1,000 needles were being driven into it, and my breath caught with every attempt to draw air. "Oh God," I whispered as I fell to my knees beside the table. With the last of my strength, I managed to grab my cell phone and dial 911. "I need an ambulance I managed to say, my voice choked. "I think I'm having a heart attack." The next few minutes were a blur of pain and confusion. I remember calling Sarah, my 42-year-old daughter, and also Ryan, my 39-year-old son. They both arrived around the same time as the ambulance, their faces etched with a concern that at that moment deeply reassured me. "Dad, just relax. Everything's going to be okay," Sarah said as the paramedics lifted me onto the stretcher. Here I were, feeling with tears. Or at least they seemed to be in my hazy state. Ryan ran alongside the ambulance all the way to St. Luke's Hospital, repeating, "Hang on, Dad, hang on, we need you." Those 2 words of it gave me strength down during the ride. With some, I thought about how lucky I was to have such dedicated children, so worried about my well-being. Once at the hospital, everything became a whirlwind of doctors, nurses, wires and machines beeping incessantly. Dr. Evan Whitlock, my trusted cardiologist for the past 10 years, appeared quickly and took control of the situation. "Arthur, you've had a myocardial infarction," he explained with his usual professional gravity, "but you got here in time. We're going to get you stabilized, and you'll be under observation for a few days." They assigned me to room 304, not a private room, with a view of the hospital's inner courtyard. Sarah and Ryan didn't leave my side for the first few hours, taking turns holding my hand and whispering words of encouragement. As they hooked me up to the IV and the medications to stabilize my heart, I heard their voices as a comforting murmur in the background. They talked about calling relatives, organizing a schedule to stay with me over the next few days, and how important it was for me to recover quickly. "We'll do whatever it takes to make sure Dad is okay," I heard Sarah say. "Yes, whatever it takes," Ryan confirmed. At that moment, with my heart still beating erratically and connected to machines monitoring every beat, I felt profoundly grateful. Despite the scare, despite the pain, I had my children with me. I thought of Rose and how proud she would be to see how our children had grown into such loving and responsible people. The sedatives began to take effect and my vision grew blurry. Sarah and Ryan's voices faded slowly as I drifted into a state between sleep and wakefulness. It was then that I heard something that would change my life forever. At first, I thought it was just the medication making me hallucinate, but their voices became clearer, closer. They were talking near my bed, believing I was completely sedated. "How much time do you think he has left?" whispered a voice I recognized as Ryan's. "I don't know, but I hope it's not much," Sarah replied in a tone I had never heard from her before. My heart, already weak, gave a jolt that the machines immediately registered, but I feigned sleep, every one of my senses now on high alert. waiting to hear more of the conversation that had begun to terrify me. The medication kept me in a strange state, as if I were floating between consciousness and sleep. But every word that came out of my children's mouths reached my ears with a clarity that chilled me to the bone. "Look, Sarah," Ryan murmured, moving closer to my bed. "The machines show he's stable, but at his age, anything can happen." "I know," she replied with a coldness I had never noticed in her voice before. "I've been thinking about the apartments. The one on the Upper West Side is valued at nearly $2 million, and yours in Tribeca is $2.5. My breathing remained shallow and controlled, but inside I felt as if I were being stabbed. These were the apartments I had given them when they got married. Properties that were still in my name because I wanted to ensure they would never have financial troubles. Plus there's the $10 million in the bank accounts, Sarah continued. I went through the documents when I was cleaning his office last month. Everything is very well organized. Ryan leaned in even closer, so close I could feel his breath. "And what about the current will? It mainly favors us as it should," Sarah answered with a satisfaction that turned my stomach. "But you know, as long as he's alive, he can change it whenever he wants." A heavy silence stretched for several minutes. The only sounds were the constant beeping of the machines and the distant footsteps of nurses in the hallway. I kept my eyes closed, controlling my breathing to seem natural, though my heart was pounding so hard I feared the monitors would give me away. "Come with me to the bathroom," Sarah whispered suddenly. "We need to talk more privately." I heard their footsteps move toward the small private bathroom in my room. The door clicked shut softly, but their voices, though quieter, still reached me. "Ryan, I've been thinking," I heard Sarah say. "Dad is very weak. The doctor said another heart attack could be fatal." "So what are you proposing?" Ryan asked, his tone hard to decipher. "Well, hospitals are places where a lot of things happen. Patients his age with heart problems sometimes don't recover as we expect." The silence that followed was deafening. My mind refused to process what I was hearing. These were my children, the babies I had held in my arms, whom I had taught to walk, for whom I had paid for the best schools and universities. "Sarah, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Ryan whispered. "I'm just saying that if his condition were to worsen, naturally it would be a blessing for him. He wouldn't have to suffer anymore, and we could honor his memory in the best way possible," she replied, her voice so sweet it contrasted horribly with her words. "But how the doctors, the nurses? There are cameras everywhere. I'll bring some natural things tomorrow. Herbs that can be problematic for someone with his heart condition. No one would suspect a thing. It would be as if his heart just couldn't take it anymore." My entire body tensed. It took a superhuman effort not to open my eyes and scream that I had heard everything. These monsters, because that's what they were planning to murder me for money. "Are you sure it will work?" Ryan asked. And his question confirmed that they were both in on this diabolical plan, completely. I have a pharmacist's friend who explained certain substances that can cause fatal arrhythmias. Mixed into his IV drip, they'd be undetectable in a routine autopsy. It would look like a natural death. And when, tomorrow night during the shift change, the nurses are always busy between 8 and 9, we'd have plenty of time. Ryan sighed deeply. "If we do this, it has to be perfect. We can't risk anything going wrong." "It won't go wrong," Sarah assured him, with a confidence that terrified me. "I've been planning this since he started talking about revising the will last year. We can't let him donate everything to those stupid charities like he threatened to do after Mom died." They returned to the room and approached my bed again. Sarah touched my forehead with a fine tenderness that made me hate it. "Poor Daddy," she murmured. "Let's hope he doesn't suffer much." "Yeah," Ryan added, May he rest in peace soon. They stayed for a few more minutes talking about visiting hours and who would stay with me overnight. It all sounded so normal, so full of filial love that anyone listening would have thought they were the most devoted children in the world. When they finally left, promising to return early in the morning, I was left alone with my thoughts and the constant sound of the machines monitoring my betrayed heart. Tears streamed silently down my cheeks as I processed the magnitude of what I had discovered. My own children, my flesh and blood, were willing to kill me for money. Rose had always warned me that I was spoiling them too much, that I gave them everything without teaching them the value of work and sacrifice, but never, not even in my worst nightmares, did I imagine they would go this far. The early morning hours in the hospital were the longest of my entire existence. Every second dragged on like an eternity as my mind struggled to accept the reality I had uncovered. The constant beeping of the heart monitors had become a sinister soundtrack to my darkest thoughts. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 3:47 in the morning, March 16th. The nurses came by every hour to check my vital signs, but between those visits I was completely alone with the most devastating tour I had ever faced. Rose, my beloved wife, always had a special intuition for reading people. I vividly remembered a conversation we had 3 years before she died when Sarah came home asking for money to invest in a business. Rose had taken me aside and whispered, "Arthur, that girl has greed in her eyes, be careful." I had defended our daughter, arguing that she just needed support to get started. I transferred $50,000 to her that same week. The business mysteriously failed in 2 months, and Sarah never mentioned paying the money back. Then there was Ryan, always with elaborate excuses about unique opportunities that required small loans from his father. I mentally calculated that over the last 5 years, I had given each of them more than $200,000 in various forms of assistance, not to mention the apartments where they lived, Rentrée, which was still my property. Tears rolled down my cheeks again as I remembered the last serious conversation I had with Rose before the cancer took her. She was in her hospital bed looking frail, but with that piercing gaze she always had. "Ah," she had said, taking my hand with her already weak fingers. "Promise me you will be careful with Sarah and Ryan when I'm gone. I love them dearly, but they've grown up expecting everything to be handed to them. That can turn people into something we don't want them to be. I had promised her I would be careful, but after her death, loneliness and grief made me seek my children's constant company. I gave them everything they asked for, believing it would guarantee their love and presence. How naive I had been. Now hooked up to these machines, I understood that my excessive generosity hadn't bought filial love, but toxic dependency and boundless ambition. To Sarah and Ryan, I wasn't their beloved father. I was an obstacle between them and a fortune they considered rightfully theirs. The physical pain of the heart attack palled in comparison to this emotional agony. It felt as if my heart had been ripped out, not with a scalpel, but with bare hands. But as the hours passed slowly, something began to shift inside me. The initial shock and sadness started to transform into something colder, more calculating. Rose always said I had an exceptional analytical mind for business, and now that same strategic ability was beginning to activate. If Sarah and Ryan thought they could murder me and inherit my fortune, they were gravely mistaken. I hadn't built a $10 million estate by being passive or naive in business. I had survived economic crises, ruthless competitors and treacherous partners. My own children would be no different. I remembered where my cell phone in the drawer of the nightstand, hidden under some magazines I had brought from home. The nurses had told me I could use it, but to keep the volume low. Very carefully I checked that no one was in the hallway and took out the device. My hands trembled slightly, not just from the medication, but from the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I needed evidence. Without proof of what I had heard, any accusation I made would sound like the delusions of a sick old man. But if I could record a similar conversation, I would have something concrete to work with. I opened the voice recording app that Ryan himself had taught me to use the year before when I wanted to record some business ideas. The irony was bitter. My own son had given me the tool that could destroy his plans. I set the phone to start recording with a single tap and placed it strategically under the magazines with the microphone aimed toward where Sarah and Ryan had been standing during their earlier conversation. Then I practiced my performance. I had to appear completely unconscious, sedated by the medication while remaining alert to capture every detail of their future conversations. It was an act that could save my life. I also began to plan my next moves. Martha Finch, my trusted lawyer for 15 years, had to be contacted immediately. She knew every detail of my estate and had drafted my current will. If anyone could help me protect myself legally, it was her. I thought about the apartments, Sarah's on the Upper West Side, and a 1900 FT penthouse in one of the most exclusive areas of New York, and Ryan's in Tribeca, a 2,400 square foot duplex with park views. Both properties were entirely in my name, with occupancy agreements I could terminate at any time. The monthly transfers to $3,000 to each of them deposited like clockwork on the 15th of every month into their personal accounts, money they used to maintain a lifestyle their part-time jobs could never support. All of that could be stopped with a few phone calls and some signed documents. But first, I needed more information. I had to fully understand the scope of their plan, who else might be involved, and above all, get irrefutable proof of their murderous intentions. Dawn began to filter through my hospital room window. Soon, Sarah and Ryan would return, likely with faces of feigned concern and sweet words that I now knew were completely false. But this time, I would be ready. This time, the hunter had become the prey, and my dear children had no idea that their victim was watching them with eyes wide open. The war had begun, and they had just awakened the most dangerous adversary they could have ever imagined. A betrayed father with resources, connections, and now nothing left to lose. At 8 in the morning, on March 16th, Sarah and Ryan walked into my room with perfectly rehearsed expressions of concern. They brought coffee and some magazines, acting like the model children the world believed them to be. "Good morning, Dad," Sarah whispered, approaching my bed. "How are you feeling this morning?" I kept my eyes closed and breathed slowly, mimicking the pattern of someone just waking from a deep sleep. My left hand rested naturally on the magazines, hiding my phone, ready to activate the recording as soon as necessary. "He's very quiet," Ryan murmured. "The medication really has him knocked out." "Better this way," Sarah replied with that coldness I now recognize perfectly. "We don't want him to suffer unnecessarily." They moved toward the window supposedly to open the curtains and let in more light, but I knew it was their way of moving away from my bed to speak more freely. "Did you bring what we talked about last night?" Ryan asked, in a very low voice. "MC down." Discreetly, I tapped my phone's screen to start the recording. The device vibrated slightly, confirming it had begun capturing audio. Of course, Sarah answered in days. "I have everything ready in my purse." "Laura," my pharmacist friend gave me exactly what we need. There are concentrated extracts of oleander and foxglove. In small amounts, they'll cause a severe arrhythmia that his weak heart won't be able to handle. And is she sure it won't be detectable completely? These compounds metabolize quickly. By the time they do any post-mortem analysis, it will look like a completely natural death caused by cardiac complications. My heart raced dangerously, so much so that I feared the machines would alert them to my agitated state. but I managed to control my breathing and maintain an appearance of absolute calm. "What time are you planning to do it?" Ryan asked. "Tonight, round 9. The nurse's shift change is at 8:30. There's always a 20-minute window where they're busy passing on information and organizing medications. It'll be our perfect moment, and afterward we'll act like children, devastated by the unexpected loss of our dear father. We'll cry, accept condolences, organize a beautiful funeral. In 3 months, when everything has calmed down, we'll start liquidating properties and transferring accounts." The cynicism in her voice made me nauseous. This person who spoke so coldly about my murder was the same little girl I had carried in my arms when she had nightmares, the same one who asked me to read her stories before bed. "Have you thought about how we'll split everything?" Ryan asked. 50-50, as we've always agreed. 4 million for each of us, plus the value of the apartments when we sell them. But we'll have to be smart about the inheritance taxes, and if someone suspects something, who's going to suspect? Dad is 67. He just had a massive heart attack, and he's in a hospital surrounded by medical professionals. It will be the most natural death in the world. They approached my bed again. Sarah touched my forehead with a gentleness that now deeply repulsed me. "Poor thing," she murmured. "He looks so frail. It really will be a blessing when his suffering ends." "Yeah," Ryan added. "He won't have to worry about anything anymore." They stayed with me for 2 more hours, taking turns holding my hand and whispering affectionate words that sounded hollow and false. Occasionally, they spoke with the nurses, asking about my progress and showing a concern I now knew was completely feigned. At 10:30, Sarah announced she had to leave to run some personal errands. Ryan offered to stay until noon when she would return. Once Sarah was gone, Ryan visibly relaxed, took out his phone, and began making calls he didn't expect me to be able to hear. "Hey, Carlos," he said in a low voice. "Yeah, it's about what we discussed last week. We'll probably be able to move forward sooner than we thought." "No, I can't give details over the phone, but let's just say certain circumstances have accelerated. Perfect. Keep everything ready." Another call followed immediately. "Melissa, it's Ryan about the appraisal of my dad's properties." "Yes, we're going to need those numbers very soon this week." "Excellent." Each call was another stab to my heart. Not only had they planned my death, but they had already started organizing the liquidation of my estate. They had accomplices, professionals, who would help them process my inheritance as efficiently as possible. When he finally left at noon, promising to return in the afternoon, I was left alone with a recording that contained enough evidence to ruin their lives forever. With trembling hands, I stopped the recording and checked its quality. It was perfect. Every word, every detail of their diabolical plan had been captured with crystal clarity. Now I needed to act quickly. I searched my tax for Martha Finch's number and dialed with the volume at its lowest setting. "Arthur," she answered after the second ring. "How are you? I heard about your heart attack. I was planning to visit you this afternoon." "Martha," I whispered, "I need you to come immediately. It's a life or death legal emergency. Literally, what's wrong?" "You sound very upset. I can't explain over the phone. Just come to St. Luke's Hospital, room 304. And Martha, bring everything necessary to make immediate changes to my will and the apartment agreements. Arthur, you're scaring me. Is everything all right?" "No, Martha, nothing is all right, but when you hear what I have to show you, you'll understand why I need to act immediately. I'll be there in an hour. In the meantime, don't talk to anyone else about this. Don't worry, no one else can know we're talking." I hung up and hid the phone under the magazines again. My heart was racing, but for the first time since last night, it wasn't just from fear or sadness, it was from determination. Sarah and Ryan had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated their father. They thought I was a frail, trusting old man who would be easy to eliminate. But I hadn't gotten where I was by being naive or passive. The war, they had declared, that was about to turn against them in ways they could never have imagined. Martha Finch arrived at the hospital exactly 1 hour after my call, punctual as she had always been during the 15 years she had handled my legal affairs. I saw her walk down the hall with her professional briefcase, wearing the serious expression she adopted when she knew she was facing something important. "Arthur," she whispered as she entered my room, "what on earth is going on? You sounded desperate on the phone." I sat up slightly in bed and pulled my phone out from under the magazines. "Martha, what you're about to hear is going to change everything you thought you knew about my children, but before I play this, I need you to swear as my lawyer that you will maintain absolute confidentiality until we decide how to proceed. You have my word and my professional privilege," she replied, sitting in the chair next to my bed, "but you have me very worried." I handed her my phone's earbuds and played the full recording of the morning's conversation. I watched her face as she listened, saw her expression shift from curiosity to absolute horror. When the recording finished, she removed the earbuds with trembling hands. "My God, Arthur, this is a premeditated murder plot." "Exactly. And from what I heard, they plan to carry it out tonight during the nurse's shift and change." Martha stood up and began pacing the room. "Processing the information. We have to call the police immediately. This recording is enough evidence to arrest them for conspiracy to commit murder." "No," I replied firmly. "If we involve the authorities now, it will turn into a public scandal. The media will find out, and I'd rather handle this more strategically. What do you propose then?" "First, I need to get out of this hospital before 9 tonight." "Is it possible to arrange an urgent medical transfer?" Martha opened her briefcase and took out her tablet. "I know Dr. Whitlock from other cases. If he authorizes a transfer for medical complications, we could get you to the Prescott Clinic this afternoon." "Perfect. And second, I want you to immediately prepare all the documents to revoke my current will and create a completely new one. Are you sure? That's a very drastic misstep. Martha, my children are planning to murder me for money. There's nothing more drastic than that." She nodded and began typing notes on her tablet. "What are your instructions for the new will?" "I want my entire fortune. The 10 million in bank accounts, plus all properties, to be donated to 3 cancer-focused charities: the American Cancer Society, the Oncology Research Wing at Johns Hopkins, and the National Cancer Institute, and Sarah and Ryan completely excluded. Not a single dollar. Also, I want you to immediately terminate the occupancy agreements for their apartments. They have 72 hours to vacate the properties." Martha stopped typing and looked at me directly. "Arthur, I understand your pain and anger, but are you sure you want to make such permanent decisions while you're emotionally distressed?" "Martha, do you have children?" "Yes. 2. Could you forgive either of them if you discovered they were planning to murder you for money?" She was silent for a long moment. "No," she admitted finally. "I probably couldn't." "Then you understand why these decisions aren't emotional. They are the only logical response to a betrayal of this magnitude." Just then my phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Dad, I'll be at the hospital at 6 to stay with you tonight. Ryan will come after 8. We love you so much." I showed the message to Martha. "See, she's confirming exactly what we heard on the recording. They plan to be here when they do it." "All right," Martha said, packing her things. "I'm going to speak with Dr. Whitlock immediately about the transfer. In the meantime, you keep up the act of being sedated. They can't suspect anything has changed. How long will you need to prepare all the legal documents? Given the urgency, I can have everything ready by tomorrow morning, but I'll need witnesses for the signatures. Dr. Whitlock can be one. Can you get another? My associate Carlo Reyes can come. She's also a registered notary public. Martha headed for the door, but stopped her before leaving. Arthur, one more thing. Do you want us to also record tonight's conversation when they come to visit? It won't be necessary. By the time they realize what's happened, it will be too late for them to do anything. After Martha left, I reflected on the steps I was taking. Part of me still couldn't believe it had come to this. These were the children I had raised, whom I had loved unconditionally for decades. But I remembered Sarah's exact words from that morning. It really will be a blessing when his suffering ends. She wasn't talking about my physical or emotional pain. She was referring specifically to the inconvenience my existence posed to their financial plans. At 3 in the afternoon, Dr. Whitlock entered my room with a concerned expression that seemed genuine. Arthur, your lawyer explained that there are some family complications requiring your immediate transfer to another institution. Medically, you're stable for the move, but are you sure it's necessary? Doctor, it's absolutely necessary. My life could be in danger if I remain here tonight. He frowned. Your life? What kind of danger are you talking about? I showed him my phone with the recording. Doctor, what you're about to hear may be disturbing, but I need you to understand why the transfer is urgent. After listening to the entire recording, Dr. Whitlock was silent for several minutes. Arthur, this is unbelievable. Are you absolutely certain those are your children's voices? Absolutely certain. I've known them since they were born. In that case, I'll arrange the transfer immediately. Officially, it will be for cardiovascular complications requiring specialized monitoring. No one will question my medical decision. What time can we do it? At 5 this afternoon. That will give us enough time to get you fully settled at the Prescott before your children arrive here tonight. The irony was perfect. While Sarah and Ryan were preparing to execute their murderous plan, their victim would be safe in another hospital preparing the complete destruction of their lives as they knew them. The hunter had definitively become the prey, and they had no idea what was coming for them. At 5 sharp, a private ambulance arrived at St. Luke's Hospital to handle my transfer. Dr. Whitlock had coordinated everything perfectly, presenting my case as a cardiovascular complication requiring specialized care in the advanced cardiology unit of the Prescott Clinic. The patient is experiencing intermittent arrhythmias that need continuous monitoring with more sophisticated equipment, he explained to the nurses as they prepared my transfer. The family will be notified once he's stabilized at the new facility. As they wheeled me on the stretcher toward the ambulance, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. I was escaping a murder attempt orchestrated by my own children, but at the same time, I was definitively abandoning any hope of a normal family relationship. The journey to the Prescott was quiet. The paramedics routinely monitored my vital signs, unaware that their patient was not just an elderly man with heart problems, but a man who had just discovered the deepest betrayal imaginable. Upon arriving at the new clinic, I was assigned to room 812 on the 8th floor, a private suite with a panoramic view of New York that Martha had specifically requested. The atmosphere was calmer than the previous hospital, with wide hallways and a staff that seemed less rushed. The head nurse, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Keene, personally oversaw my settling in. Mr. Calloway, Dr. Whitlock has informed us of your condition. We will be monitoring you 24/7, and we have specific instructions that only authorized personnel can be given information about your location. Thank you, Patricia. That's exactly what I need right now. At 6:30, Martha arrived, accompanied by her associate, Carla Reyes, an elegant woman of about 40 who carried a notary's briefcase. "How are you feeling, Arthur?" Martha asked as Carla arranged documents on the side table in my room. "Physically fine, emotionally shattered, but mentally clearer than ever," I replied, sitting up in the new bed. Have you yet prepared all the documents you requested? Martha continued. The new will, the revocation of the old one, the terminations of the occupancy agreements, and the orders to suspend all automatic bank transfers. Carla approached with the papers. Mad Mr. Calloway, before we proceed, I must ask you, as a notary, are you making these decisions of your own free will, without coercion of any kind and with a full understanding of the consequences? Completely. In fact, I want you to hear something that justifies every one of these decisions. I played the full recording for Carla. Her reaction was similar to Martha's initial disbelief, followed by absolute horror. In my 20 years as a notary, I have never witnessed anything like this, Carla murmured. This fully justifies any decision you wish to make regarding your estate. We began the process of signing documents. The new will was a masterpiece of legal precision that Martha had drafted in record time. Every clause was designed to be legally unchallengeable and to maximize the benefit to the selected charities. The American Cancer Society will receive $3 million, Martha explained as I signed. The Johns Hopkins Oncology Research Wing will receive $3 million, and the National Cancer Institute will receive $2 million plus the value of all real estate properties. What about Sarah and Ryan's apartments? Those go into immediate liquidation. I've contacted a luxury real estate agency that can put them on the market tomorrow. Given their prime locations, they should sell quickly. Carla finished authenticating the signatures and stamping the documents. Everything is perfectly legal and registered. These documents completely nullify any previous will and clearly establish the new provisions and the notifications to Sarah and Ryan. I've scheduled the calls for tomorrow at 9 in the morning, Martha replied. I will inform them of the changes and give them 72 hours to vacate the apartments. At that moment, my phone buzzed with multiple messages. They were from Sarah and Ryan, sent from St. Luke's Hospital. Sarah, Dad, I got to the hospital and they're saying you were transferred. Where to? Are you okay, Ryan? Dad, nobody will tell us where you are. We're really worried. Please answer. Sarah, I've called every hospital in New York. Tell me where you are so I can come to see you. I showed the messages to Martha and Carla, see? They're desperate because they can't execute their plan if they don't know where I am. Are you going to answer them? Martha asked. No, not until tomorrow after they receive the legal notifications. I want them to spend tonight wondering what went wrong with their perfect plan. Carla packed all the original documents into her briefcase. Mr. Calloway, these documents will be filed with the county clerk's office first thing tomorrow. From that moment on, they will be completely irrevocable without your direct consent. Perfect. Is there anything else we need to do tonight? Just one thing, said Martha. I've coordinated with the bank to suspend all automatic transfers starting tomorrow. I've also notified the building management of the apartments that the occupancy agreements have been terminated. At 8:00 in the evening, exactly when Sarah and Ryan would have been preparing to execute their murderous plan. I was having a quiet dinner in my new room, protected by medical staff who knew nothing about my children in a place where they couldn't find me. The irony was delicious. While they were likely running around New York, searching hospitals, calling medical contacts, and trying to understand what had gone wrong, I was signing the documents that would completely destroy their lives as they knew them. Patricia, the head nurse, came in to check my vitals. How are you feeling, Mr. Calloway? Your numbers look much better than when you arrived. I feel like I've averted a catastrophe, I answered honestly. That's wonderful. Sometimes a change of environment is igually what a patient needs to begin their true recovery. She had no idea how true her observation was. My recovery wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, and spiritual. For the first time in years, I felt free from the toxic expectations and manipulation of my children. After the medical staff retired for the night, I was left alone with my thoughts and the satisfaction of knowing that Sarah and Ryan were experiencing their first night of true panic. Tomorrow would be the day of revelations when they would discover that the father they had planned to murder had not only survived, but had counterattacked in a way more devastating than they could have ever imagined. The war had officially begun, and I had just won the first battle without them even knowing we were fighting. The morning of March 19th passed with a quietness I hadn't experienced in days. I woke naturally at 6 in the morning without the constant jolt of fear that had characterized my last few nights. The staff at the Prescott Clinic were discreet and professional, allowing me to rest without unnecessary interruptions. Dr. Whitlock arrived early for his usual medical rounds. He checked my vitals and seemed pleased with my progress. "Arthur, your cardiac parameters have improved considerably since the transfer," he observed, examining the monitors. "How are you feeling emotionally?" "Surprisingly well, Doctor. I think getting away from the previous environment has done me more good than I expected." "Excellent. Emotional stress can be as detrimental to cardiac recovery as any physical factor." He had no idea how right he was. The stress of knowing my own children were planning to murder me had been replaced by the satisfaction of knowing I was in complete control of the situation. At 8:02 in the morning, Martha arrived, accompanied by Carla and a third man I didn't immediately recognize. "Arthur, this is Edward Sterling from the New York County Clerk's office. Carlos said he's here to personally oversee the filing of all the documents we signed last night." Edward, a distinguished man of about 50, approached with an official folder. "Mr. Alloway, it's an honor to meet you. I have reviewed all the documentation prepared by your attorney and wish to confirm one last time that you fully understand the implications of these estate changes. Completely, Mr. Sterling. I have made these decisions with full awareness of their consequences." "Perfect. We will proceed with the official filing then." Over the next hour, Edward meticulously registered each document into the official system. The new will, the revocation of the old one, the contract terminations, and all the banking orders were officially established and irrevocable. "Mr. Calloway," Edward explained, as he stamped the final papers. "As of this moment, these documents have full legal force. Any attempt to challenge them would require proof of mental incompetence or coercion, which will be impossible to prove given the documented circumstances." Martha opened her tablet and showed me a series of confirmations she had received that morning. "The banks have confirmed the suspension of all automatic transfers, effective immediately. The apartments have been officially removed from the occupancy agreements and are being prepared for immediate sale. What about the real estate agencies? I've contacted Premium Properties NYC, which specializes in luxury real estate. They will appraise both apartments this afternoon and can have them on the market by tomorrow. Given the prime locations, they expect competitive offers in less than a week." Carla checked her watch. "It's 9:10. Are you ready for us to begin the notifications?" I felt a mix of anticipation and sadness. This moment would mark the point of no return in my relationship with Sarah and Ryan. Once they knew what I had discovered and the actions I had taken, any possibility of reconciliation would vanish forever. But I remembered their exact words from that terrible morning. The ease with which they had planned my death, the coldness with which they had calculated my suffering versus their financial gain. These were not my children. They were strangers who shared my last name and had inherited my DNA, but not my values or my humanity. "I'm ready," I declared firmly. Martha dialed Sarah's number first, putting the phone on speaker so we could all hear the conversation. "Martha?" Sarah answered after the first ring, her voice tense and exhausted. "Do you know where my father is? We've been looking for him all night." "Good morning, Sarah. I'm calling you under specific instructions from your father to inform you of important decisions he has made regarding his estate." What decisions? Where is he? Why can't we see him? Your father has decided to completely revoke his previous will and establish new estate provisions. Effective immediately, you and your brother have been totally excluded from any inheritance. The silence that followed was so profound I thought the call had dropped. What? What are you saying? Sarah finally stammered. Furthermore, the occupancy agreement for your apartment on the Upper West Side has been terminated. You have 72 hours to vacate the property completely. That's impossible. My father wouldn't do that. You're lying. All monthly transfers you were receiving have also been suspended. The last one was processed on March 15th. I want to talk to him immediately. I demand to know where he is. Your father does not wish to have contact with you at this time. All legal documents have been duly filed and are irrevocable. This can't be happening. I'm going to sue. I'm going to contest everything. You have the right to try, Sarah. But I advise you that any legal process will require significant financial resources. Resources you will no longer be receiving from your father. The call ended abruptly. Sarah had hung up, likely in a state of complete shock. A predictable reaction, Carla observed. Denial, anger, legal threats. It's the typical pattern when someone unexpectedly loses an inheritance. Martha immediately dialed Ryan's number. Martha, he answered, his voice anxious. Please tell me you know something about Dad. Good morning, Ryan. I'm calling to inform you of estate changes your father has decided to implement. She repeated the exact same information she had given Sarah. Ryan's reaction was different. A long silence was followed by a bitter laugh. I see, he said finally. Dad found something out, didn't he? I'm not authorized to discuss the reasons for his decisions. You don't need to. The timing says it all. His voice had taken on a cold tone I hadn't heard before. Tell my dear father that this isn't over. Is that a threat, Ryan? It's a promise. Sarah and I are not going to stand by while he takes away what is rightfully ours. I'll remind you that nothing was rightfully yours. It was all your father's generosity. Generosity. He had every right to withdraw at any time. Ryan hung up without another word. Edward had been taking notes during both conversations. Mr. Calloway, I recommend we officially document these reactions. Your son's threats could be relevant if they attempt future legal action. Do it. I nodded. I want everything on the record. Martha consulted her notes. Official written notifications will be delivered to their residences this afternoon by certified mail. I have also coordinated with private security to supervise the evictions if necessary. Private security. Arthur, you've just taken away properties valued at over $4 million and an inheritance of $10 million more. People react in unpredictable ways when they lose sums that large. It was a sensible precaution. Sarah and Ryan had proven they were capable of planning a murder. It wasn't a stretch to think they might try other forms of revenge. Carla began to pack away the finalized documents. Mr. Calloway, is there anything else you need done today? Yes, I replied after a moment of thought. I want you to prepare a detailed letter explaining exactly why I made these decisions, not for Sarah and Ryan, but for the official record, or if anything should happen to me in the future. I want it to be clear that these decisions were made for specific, justified reasons. Excellent idea, Edward approved. That letter will be invaluable if they try to legally challenge your decisions post-mortem. As the professionals finished their work, I reflected on what I had just done. In less than 24 hours, I had completely destroyed the lives Sarah and Ryan had built on my generosity. But I felt no guilt. I felt justice. They had chosen to see me as an obstacle to wealth rather than as the father who had loved them unconditionally. Now they would face the consequences of that choice in the most direct way possible. March 21st dawned overcast in New York, as if the weather had decided to match the drama that was about to unfold. From my room at the Prescott Clinic, I watched the city awaken mentally preparing myself for what would be one of the most decisive days of my life. Patricia, my head nurse, had noticed my mood during her morning check-in. "You seem different today, Mr. Calloway." "More determined." "Today is the day certain truths come to light," I replied, as she noted my vitals on the chart. "Your numbers are excellent. Your heart has strengthened considerably since you arrived." It wasn't just my physical heart that had grown stronger. It was my resolve, my mental clarity, and my determination to serve justice by my own means. At 8:30 in the morning, I received a text I had been waiting for. It was from the certified mail company Martha had hired, documents successfully delivered to both addresses. 847 Columbus AP 12A received by Sarah Calloway at 8:15 a.m., 203 Franklin St. D. Apt 8B received by Ryan Calloway at 8:22 a.m. Perfect. Now they held in their hands the official written notifications of everything Martha had told them over the phone the day before. The banjaments detailed their new circumstances: total exclusion from the will, termination of their occupancy agreements, suspension of monthly transfers, and a 72-hour deadline to vacate the properties. My phone immediately began to ring. It was Sarah. I chose not to answer. Instead, I watched as the screen lit up again and again with successive calls. Sarah, Ryan, Sarah, again, an unknown number that was likely one of them using another phone. Then text messages that started as pleading and quickly turned threatening. Sarah, Dad, please pick up. We can fix this. Ryan, Dad, answer the phone. We need to talk urgently. Sarah, this is ridiculous. We're your children. You can't do this to us. Ryan, if you don't answer, we're going to find ways to find you. The tone of the messages grew progressively more desperate and aggressive. It was fascinating to watch their true personalities emerge when they felt cornered. At 9:30, Martha arrived with an expression that mixed professional satisfaction with personal concern. The couriers confirmed the deliveries, she informed me, sitting beside my bed. They both received the documents personally, so they can't claim they weren't properly notified. Have you heard from them? Oh yes, Sarah called my office 4 times between 8:30 and 9:20. My secretary followed instructions and sent all her calls to my voicemail. And what did the messages say? Martha took out her phone and played the first message. It was Sarah's voice, but distorted by tears and hysteria. "Martha, this is a nightmare. My father can't be in his right mind. No one changes a will so drastically without being manipulated. I need to know where he is so I can talk to him. This must be your doing. You're taking advantage of a vulnerable old man." The second message was from Ryan, and his tone was completely different. Cold, calculating, threatening. "Martha, I don't know what game you're playing, but this isn't going to end like this. My father built his fortune with our help, with our support all these years. We will not allow some ambitious lawyer to take advantage of his deteriorating mental state to benefit charities he doesn't even know." Interesting. I observed after hearing both messages. Sarah resorts to emotional manipulation and accuses undue influence. Ryan goes straight to veiled threats and tries to rewrite family history. Exactly the pattern I expected, Martha confirmed. I've documented everything officially. Any future attempt to challenge your decisions will have to face these recordings as evidence of their true motivations. Just then my phone rang again, and this time it was a number I didn't recognize, but I decided to answer out of curiosity. "Dad," it was Sarah's voice, clearly calling from a different phone. "Please don't hang up. We need to talk." "Hello, Sarah," I replied calmly. "How are you this morning? How do you think I am?" "I just received documents telling me I've lost my inheritance and have 3 days to leave my home." "What is going on? I think you know exactly what's going on." There was a long pause. I could hear her ragged breathing on the other end of the line. "Dad, this is about something we said at the hospital. You have to understand we were under a lot of stress. We weren't serious about any of it. Something you said. Sarah, I heard you plan my murder in detail. I heard how you were going to poison my IV. I heard how you had already calculated the division of my inheritance." Another longer pause. That's not what we meant. We were speaking hypothetically, trying to process the fear of losing you. Hypothetically, bringing poison to the hospital is hypothetical. Calculating the exact timing of the nurse's shift change is hypothetical. Dad, please, we can explain everything. Just give us a chance to see you and clear up this misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, Sarah. There is a complete recording of your conversation. There is irrefutable evidence of your intentions. The silence that followed was so deep I thought she had hung up. "A recording?" she finally whispered. "A complete recording with dates, times, and clearly identifiable voices. A recording that is in my lawyer's possession and will be presented in any court if you attempt to contest my decisions." "This can't be happening," Sarah murmured. "This can't be real. It's as real as your plan to kill me for $10 million. We were never actually going to do anything. We were just venting. Getting specific poisons from a pharmacist is venting. Planning the exact time and method of execution is venting." Sarah started to cry, but it no longer moved me. These were not tears of genuine remorse. They were tears of panic at having lost her source of income and her inheritance. "Dad, we're your children. You raised us. You love us. You can't destroy our lives over one stupid conversation we never would have acted on. Sarah, you destroyed any relationship we could have had the moment you decided my death would be convenient for your finances. Please, Dad, please, we're begging you. Ryan is here with me. We can come wherever you are and fix this together as a family. We are not a family. Families don't plan murders among their members. You, two strangers who share my last name and who turned out to be capable of premeditated homicide. Don't say that. Of course, we're family. Murderers are not my family, Sarah." I hung up the phone and immediately put it on silent. I had no interest in hearing more pleas, threats, or attempts at manipulation. Martha had been listening to the entire conversation. "Arthur, that call was perfect. You've made it completely clear that you know their intentions and that your decisions are a direct consequence of their actions. Do you think they'll try something desperate?" "It's possible. That's why I've arranged it for private security to watch both the apartments and the area around this clinic. If they try to locate you here, they will be stopped immediately." The rest of the day passed with a constant succession of missed calls, increasingly frantic text messages, and as Martha informed me, visits from Sarah and Ryan to her office demanding information about my whereabouts. But I remained calm, protected, and completely in control of the situation. For the first time in years, my children couldn't manipulate me, they couldn't emotionally blackmail me, and they couldn't hurt me. They had bet everything on a murderous plan they thought was perfect, and they had lost absolutely everything. March 22nd dawned with a light rain tapping gently against the window of my room at the Prescott Clinic. It was my 4th day in this safe haven, and every passing hour further solidified my sense of having made the right decisions. Patricia came in as usual for the morning checkup, but this time she wore a worried expression I hadn't seen before. "Mr. Calloway, I need to inform you about an incident that occurred during the night," she said, while checking the monitors. "Two individuals presented themselves at the front desk around 2:00 in the morning, claiming to be your children and demanding to see you immediately." My pulse quickened slightly, which the machines instantly detected. "What happened?" Our security staff has strictly followed the instructions your lawyer left. They neither confirmed nor denied your presence here and explained that patient information is confidential. They left after a rather heated argument. A heated argument? The young woman became very agitated, shouting that she had a right to see her father and that she would sue the hospital for obstruction. The man with her was more controlled but equally insistent. Sarah and Ryan had been canvassing New York hospitals through the night, likely sleepless, desperately trying to locate me. The mental image of their frantic search brought me a satisfaction I hadn't expected to feel. "Is there anything I should be worried about?" I asked. "Not at all. We've reinforced the instructions with all staff. No one will provide information about you without express authorization from your lawyer. Additionally, we've alerted security to be especially vigilant." After Patricia left, my phone began its daily routine of calls and messages which I no longer bothered to read completely. However, one message from Ryan caught my attention because of its different tone. "Dad, we've been looking for you all night. Sarah hasn't stopped crying since yesterday. I know you think we did something terrible, but you need to hear our side. I swear we would have never actually hurt you. Please, just give us a chance to explain." It was interesting to see his strategy shift from threats to pleas. But it was too late for emotional manipulation. At 10 in the morning, Martha arrived with a folder full of documents and an expression of professional satisfaction. "I have excellent news," she announced, settling into the chair by my bed. "The real estate agency already has 3 serious offers for Sarah's apartment and 2 for Ryan's. The prices are above the initial valuation so quickly. Properties in those locations are highly coveted. Plus, we set competitive prices to ensure quick sales. The Upper West Side apartment could close as soon as tomorrow if Sarah doesn't present any valid legal objections. Can she present objections? Technically, she could try, but she has no legal basis. The apartments were always in your name and the occupancy agreements were properly terminated with the required notice." Martha opened her folder and showed me photographs she had taken at both properties. "I stopped by the apartments this morning with the real estate agents. It's interesting what we found." The photos showed the apartments completely empty. Not a piece of furniture, not a decoration, nothing to indicate anyone had ever lived there. "They took absolutely everything during the night," Martha continued. "Furniture, appliances, even the light fixtures and curtains that were technically part of the property." "Is that legal?" "Not entirely. Some of those items were permanent fixtures that should have remained with the property, but honestly, it's better this way. It simplifies the sale and shows they've implicitly accepted the termination of the agreements." It was typical of Sarah and Ryan. In the face of adversity, their first instinct was to take everything they could carry. They hadn't changed at all since childhood, when they would hide toys so no one else could use them. Where do you think they've moved? According to my research, Sarah is staying with her mother-in-law in Montclair, New Jersey. Ryan is apparently in a hotel near Midtown, probably spending the last of his savings. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from an unknown number. "Mr. Calloway, this is Melissa Alvarez, real estate appraiser. Your children hired me last week to appraise their properties. They are claiming the sale process is illegal and that they have rights to the properties. I need to confirm the validity of the documentation they have presented." I showed the message to Martha, who smiled ironically. "This is Melissa Alvarez, the appraiser Ryan mentioned in one of his phone calls that you recorded. It seems Sarah and Ryan are trying to use previous contacts to find ways to stop the sales. Can they do anything? Nothing effective. The property titles are clear and indisputable, but it's interesting that they're spending money they don't have on professionals who can't help them." I decided to reply to Melissa's message directly. "Ms. Alvarez, this is Arthur Calloway, the sole owner of the properties in question. The individuals claiming rights to them were beneficiaries of occupancy agreements. that have been legally terminated. Any documentation they have presented to you lacks legal validity. My attorney, Martha Finch, can provide you with certified copies of the official documentation if necessary. The reply came in less than 5 minutes. Mr. Calloway, thank you for the clarification. Your children indeed have no documentation to support their claims. I apologize for being contacted under false pretenses. Perfect, I observed, showing the response to Martha. Now, we know they're contacting third parties with false information, trying to create non-existent legal obstacles. It's pure desperation, Martha confirmed. When people lose control of a situation, they often resort to increasingly erratic and ineffective tactics. The phone rang again. This time, it was Sarah calling from yet another unknown number. I decided to answer, mainly out of curiosity about what new strategy they had developed. Dad, thank you for answering. Her voice was hoarse, likely from so much crying and shouting. I need you to know that Ryan and I have been talking all night. We realize that what we said at the hospital was horrible and unforgivable. You realize that, do you? Yes, completely. We were scared of losing you and said terrible things we never would have actually done. But Dad, we're your children.
We've made mistakes, but that doesn't mean you should completely destroy our lives. Sarah, planning my murder wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated, premeditated decision. It wasn't real. We were just talking. People say stupid things when they're scared. Getting specific poisons from a pharmacist is just talking. There was a long pause. I could hear murmured voices in the background, probably Ryan coaching her on what to say. Dad, about that. Laura, my pharmacist friend, she says she never gave me anything dangerous. She was just playing along because she thought I was joking. It was fascinating to watch them build lies on top of their previous lies, trying to create an alternate version of reality where their homicidal intentions became dramatic misunderstandings. Sarah, I have every detail of your plan recorded.
There is no way to reinterpret it as a joke or a misunderstanding. Then use that recording to understand that we were emotionally distraught. We weren't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to calculate nurse schedules, administration methods, and the division of my inheritance. Please, Dad, we just want to see you and apologize properly. Maybe we can rebuild our relationship. There is nothing to rebuild. You chose to see me as a financial obstacle instead of as your father. Now you live with the consequences of that choice. We're not monsters. We're your children who made a terrible mistake. Monsters rarely recognize themselves as such, Sarah. I hung up the phone and reflected on the conversation. There wasn't a shred of genuine remorse in her words, only panic over the financial consequences of her actions. Martha's had been listening to the whole exchange. Arthur, that was another excellent documentation of their true motivations. Even in their apologies, they only focus on reversing the financial consequences, not on accepting moral responsibility. The rest of the day passed with more desperate attempts at contact, more creative lies about their intentions, and more evidence that Sarah and Ryan were exactly who they had shown themselves to be. People capable of murder when their financial interests were at stake. But I remained safe, protected, and completely in control of my destiny. For the first time in years, March 23rd arrived with an unusual silence. For the first time since this nightmare began, my phone didn't start ringing immediately at dawn. The absence of desperate calls was almost more unsettling than the constant barrage of the previous days. Patricia came in for the usual medical checkup, but her expression was different. She seemed both relieved and worried. "Good morning, Mr. Calloway. I have to inform you that there was another incident last night, but this time more serious than the last." I sat up in bed, paying full attention. What kind of incident? Around 11 at night, the same two individuals from the previous night returned, but this time accompanied by an older man claiming to be a lawyer. They attempted to present a fake court order demanding access to your room. A fake court order? Our security staff is experienced in identifying fraudulent documents. The supposed lawyer couldn't provide valid credentials when asked, and the court order had obvious formatting errors and signatures that were clearly not authentic. Sarah and Ryan's desperation had reached levels I hadn't anticipated. They were resorting to forging legal documents, which put them in the territory of serious criminal offences. What happened next? Security escorted them off the premises and warned them that any future attempt to enter with fraudulent documentation would result in an immediate call to the authorities. The woman had what appeared to be a panic attack in the parking lot. A panic attack? According to the security report, she started screaming that it was unfair, that you were her father, that she had rights. The younger man had to carry her to a vehicle because she apparently couldn't walk on her own. Sarah had reached the point of complete emotional collapse. As the image of my daughter being carried by her brother after attempting to forge legal documents filled me with a profound sadness mixed with the confirmation that I had made the right decisions. Do you think they will return? It's possible, but we've implemented additional measures. Their photographs have been distributed to all security personnel, and we have instructions to immediately contact the authorities if they attempt to enter again with any kind of questionable documentation. After Patricia left, I spent a long time looking out the window at New York. Somewhere in this city, Sarah and Ryan were living the devastating consequences of their choices. They had lost their homes, their income, their inheritance, and now they were risking criminal charges for forgery, but I didn't feel pity for them. I felt pity for the father I had been, for the naivety with which I had mistaken their apparent affection for genuine love. At 10 hours in the morning, my phone finally rang. It was a number I recognized as belonging to a hotel in Midtown. Dad, it was Ryan, and his voice sounded completely different. There was no trace of the arrogance or manipulation that had characterized his previous communications. He sounded defeated. Ryan. Dad, Sarah's in the hospital. She had a nervous breakdown last night after what happened at your clinic. She's sedated and can't talk. I'm sorry to hear that. You're sorry you caused this. Your sister is destroyed because her own father has completely abandoned her. Ryan, Sarah is destroyed because her murder plot failed and she lost access to my money, not because she lost me as a father.
There was a long silence. When Ryan spoke again, his voice had changed once more. Now it sounded cold, calculating. All right, Dad, you want to play hardball? We can play hardball too. Is that a threat? It's information I've been researching, the charities that are supposedly getting your inheritance. Did you know the American Cancer Society has controversies about how they use donations? Did you know some of their executives receive excessive salaries? Ryan, you're trying to manipulate me with irrelevant information. Irrelevant. You're going to donate $10 million to organizations that might be wasting money while your own children lose everything they've ever known. My own children plan to murder me. Any charity, regardless of its imperfections, is morally superior to you too. Come on, Dad, we were never really going to hurt you.
It was just a stupid fantasy, a fantasy so detailed it included specific pharmaceutical contacts and precise timing for execution. Fine. Yes, we were desperate. You spoiled us so much that we don't know how to live without your money, but that doesn't make us actual murderers. Finally, something resembling honesty. Ryan had admitted their total dependence on my money and their desperation, but he still couldn't accept that desperation didn't justify planning homicide. Ryan, the fact that you were completely dependent on my money makes your betrayal even worse, not better. Betrayal. We took care of you. We were with you when Mom died. We kept you company for years. You kept me company Because I paid you to. I paid for your apartments, your monthly transfers, and all your expenses. Your company had a price. That's not true. No. When was the last time you visited me without asking for money? When was the last time you called just to see how I was without mentioning some financial need? Another long silence. Ryan couldn't answer because we both knew the answer was never. Dad, he continued, his voice softer, I know we made terrible mistakes, but we're family. Families forgive each other. Families forgive infidelity, lies, even minor theft. Families do not forgive premeditated murder plots. It wasn't premeditated, it was desperation. Ryan, getting specific poisons from a pharmacist is premeditation. Calculating nurse schedules is premeditation. Planning the division of an inheritance after my death is premeditation. Please, Dad, Sarah's in the hospital. I've lost my apartment. We have nothing. You have exactly what you deserve. We're your children. No, you are two people who share my last name and who turned out to be capable of planning my death for money. The children I raised died the moment they decided my life was worth less than my bank account. Don't say that. It's the truth, Ryan. And the truth is, I would rather donate my fortune to strangers who dedicate their lives to saving others than leave it to relatives who dedicate their lives to planning how to kill me. This isn't over. We're going to fight. We'll contest everything. We'll prove you're being manipulated. Good luck with that. You'll need money for lawyers, money you no longer have, because you were completely dependent on mine. We'll find a way. I'm sure you'll try. But remember, I have recordings of you planning my murder. Any legal battle you start will only result in those recordings becoming public. Those recordings were obtained without our consent. In this state, it's legal to record conversations when you are a participant or when there is a risk of personal harm. Since you were planning to kill me, I qualify under both categories. I hung up the phone and immediately put it on silent. I had no interest in hearing more desperate attempts at manipulation or more empty threats of legal action they couldn't afford. Martha arrived half an hour later with news that confirmed what I had just heard. Arthur, I have information about Sarah. She is indeed admitted at Mount C for an acute nervous breakdown. Apparently, she had a complete collapse last night. Do you know the details? According to the medical reports I was able to obtain, she's presenting symptoms of severe post-traumatic stress, major depression, and suicidal ideation. She's under psychiatric observation. The irony was bitter. Sarah had planned my death and was now contemplating her own because she had lost access to my money. And Ryan is staying at the Warwick Hotel, but according to my sources, he's already several nights behind on his bill. He'll likely be evicted soon if he doesn't find funds. Have they made any real legal attempts to contest the decisions? They consulted with 3 different law firms, but none would take the case. Without funds for a retainer and with no solid legal basis, it's impossible to find professional representation. And the forgeries from last night, that's more serious. I've contacted the authorities about the attempt to use fraudulent documentation. They could face criminal charges if the clinic decides to press charges. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had anticipated. Sarah and Ryan had bet everything on a plan they thought was perfect, and now they faced complete ruin, financial, emotional, and potentially legal. But I remained calm in my room, recovering physically and finding mental peace for the first time in years. They had wanted my death. Instead, they had gotten the death of any relationship that had ever existed between us. And that to me felt like perfect justice. 6 months later, in September of 2024, I found myself sitting in the garden of the family home in Manchester, Vermont, watching my mother, Eleanor Calloway, carefully watering her rose bushes. At 89, she still had a vitality that inspired me daily, and her wisdom had been crucial during my emotional healing process. "Arthur," she said without looking up from her flowers, "you have better color in your face than when you arrived here in April. I feel like a completely different person, Mom." And it was true. The decision to move to Vermont to care for my mother had turned out to be one of the best I had ever made. The tranquility of this historic town, far from the hustle of New York and the ghosts of my previous life, had allowed me to heal both physically and emotionally. The house where I had grown up was still welcoming, filled with genuinely happy memories. Eleanor had lived here alone since my father's death in 2019, stubbornly refusing any suggestion of moving to a retirement home or hiring full-time care. "I'd rather die in my own bed than live comfortably in a stranger's," she had declared, with the determination that characterized the women of her generation. Over these months, we had developed a perfect routine. I would wake up early to make breakfast while she read the newspaper. Afterward, she would tend to her garden while I handled correspondence related to the charitable donations. In the afternoons, we would walk through the historic centre of Manchester or receive visits from neighbours who had known our family for decades. The local community had welcomed me with open arms without asking uncomfortable questions about why a man my age had decided to return to his hometown after so many years in New York. They simply accepted me as Elilana's son who had come back to care for his mother, and that was enough for me. The charities that benefited from my will had been extraordinarily efficient and transparent in managing the funds. The American Cancer Society had used the $3 million to establish a new research center in New York. The Johns Hopkins wing had created a state-of-the-art pediatric oncology unit. The National Cancer Institute had funded 3 promising research projects that were already showing encouraging preliminary results. I received regular reports on the progress of these projects, and each update confirmed that my money was making a real impact on the lives of people I didn't even know. It was a satisfaction profoundly different from anything I had experienced during my years as a businessman. Sarah and Ryan's apartments had sold quickly as Martha had predicted. The money from those sales had been added to the donations, increasing the total impact of my decision. Now, instead of financing the parasitic lifestyles of my ex-children, that money was saving real lives. As for Sarah and Ryan, I had kept my promise of having no contact with them. Martha occasionally informed me of their circumstances, more for legal precaution than out of my own curiosity. Sarah had remained hospitalized for 6 weeks after her nervous breakdown. Upon her release, she had moved in permanently with her mother-in-law in New Jersey. According to the latest news, she was working part-time at a grocery store and receiving ongoing psychological treatment. Ryan had hit rock bottom more dramatically. After being evicted from the hotel for non-payment, he had lived temporarily in his car until he finally sold it for cash. He eventually found a job as a salesman at a used car dealership on the outskirts of New York, living in a rented room in a modest neighborhood. And they had both attempted multiple legal approaches to contest my decisions, but as I had anticipated, without financial resources and with no solid legal basis, all their efforts had failed. The last attempt was in July when they hired a third-rate lawyer who filed a lawsuit alleging my diminished mental capacity. The case was dismissed at the first hearing when the recordings of their homicidal plans were presented as evidence. "What are you thinking about, son?" Eleanor asked, approaching where I sat. "About how strange it is to feel free after so many years." "Free from what?" "Free from the guilt of not doing enough, of not giving enough, of not being enough for people who were never satisfied with anything." Eleanor sat in the chair next to mine with the natural elegance she had maintained her whole life. "Arthur, do you regret the decisions you made?" It was a question I had asked myself many times over these months. "No, Mom, I regret taking so long to make them, and you never feel a longing for Sarah and Ryan. I feel a longing for the children they once were before money corrupted their filial love, but I feel nothing for the adults they became. That's healthy, son. True love doesn't include allowing others to destroy us." During these months, I had also developed new, meaningful friendships. I had joined the volunteer group at the local hospital where my connections in the medical sector proved valuable for improving their patient care programs. I also participated in a book club and had started taking painting classes, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for. My physical health had improved dramatically. Monthly cardiology checkups showed an exceptional recovery. Dr. Whitlock, who continued to be my doctor and travelled from New York for periodic checkups, attributed my improvement not only to medication, but to the radical change in my stress levels. "Arthur, your cardiac numbers are better now than they were before the heart attack," he had told me during his last visit. It's extraordinary how peace of mind can impact physical health. At night, when Eleanor retired early, I would often walk the quiet streets of Manchester, reflecting on the path I had travelled. The betrayal by Sarah and Ryan had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. It had shown me that genuine love cannot coexist with greed, and that some relationships are so toxic that eliminating them is the only way to preserve one's own mental health. Rose would have been proud of the decisions I made. During our last years together, she had repeatedly expressed concern about our children's excessive dependence and their lack of personal initiative. "You're loving them to death," she had told me once. I didn't understand the full meaning of her words until I discovered that they were literally willing to love me to my death if it suited them financially. One afternoon in late September, as I was organizing charity correspondence at my desk, I came across a letter that caught my eye. It was from the American Cancer Society, but the return address was personal. For Mr. Arthur Calloway from the Gonzalez family. I opened it with curiosity and found a photograph of a girl of about 8, smiling brightly despite clearly undergoing chemotherapy treatment. The letter read, "Mr. Calloway, we are the family of Lucy Gonzalez. Thanks to your generous donation, our daughter was able to receive an experimental treatment that was not available in the United States until your contribution allowed for the necessary technology to be brought here. Lucy is now in complete remission. We want you to know that your money not only saved our daughter's life, but preserved our entire family. We are strangers to you, but you will have our love and gratitude forever." I had to stop reading for a moment because tears blurred my vision. This letter represented exactly why I had made the right decisions. My money had saved Lucy's life, had preserved the unity of the Gonzalez family, and had created a legacy of genuine love instead of destructive greed. That evening at dinner, I read the letter to Eleanor. When I finished, we both sat in silence for several minutes. "Son," she said finally, "Rose would be so proud of the man you've become." "Mom, I think I finally understand what she was trying to tell me about Sarah and Ryan. It wasn't that she didn't love them. It was that she loved them enough not to let them become monsters." Exactly. Sometimes true love requires decisions that seem cruel, but actually protect the moral integrity of everyone involved. Now, as I write these lines in my personal journal, I can say with absolute certainty that I have never felt more at peace with myself. Sarah and Ryan lost a father who loved them unconditionally, but they gained the opportunity to learn to live on their own merits. I lost 2 people I thought were my children, but I gained the freedom to be who I truly am without manipulation or emotional blackmail. My inheritance now consists of saved lives, preserved families, and a legacy of genuine love that transcends blood relations, and that to me seems like the most complete victory I could have ever achieved. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories like this. Thanks a lot in advance. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments. I'm always curious to know what you think. Oh, and let me know where you've heard this story if you want to hear more life stories like this, like the video. And subscribe to my channel. There are many more waiting for you. Big hugs and see you next. See